In the spring of 1945, Olivia de Havilland had been effectively unemployable for 18 months. No major studio in Hollywood would hire her while her appeal was active. She was living off savings, waiting for a court to decide whether the most powerful contract mechanism the studio system had ever used was legal. The California Court of Appeal issued its ruling on December 8th. The suspension clause, the instrument Warner Brothers and every other major studio had used for 2 decades, to extend their ownership of performers indefinitely, was unenforceable. De Havilland had won. She was 28 years old. She had spent 2 years being told the odds were against her, 18 months being told she would never work again. She signed with a new studio the following week and won the Academy Award the year after that.
Olivia de Havilland was born on July 1, 1916 in Tokyo, Japan, to British parents who had no particular connection to the entertainment industry and no reason to expect their daughter would. Her parents divorced when she was young. Her mother brought her and her younger sister Joan to California, where they were raised in the kind of quiet domesticity that left no obvious path to Hollywood. The path appeared anyway at 18 when a local theater director cast her in a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Max Reinhardt saw her perform and brought her to Warner Brothers for his 1935 film adaptation of the same play. The studio saw what Reinhardt saw. She was 19 years old when she signed the contract. It was a standard 7-year agreement. A standard meaning Warner Brothers controlled her working hours, her public image, and her right to accept or refuse any role they assigned her. She had no meaningful leverage and no particular reason yet to think she would need it. Gone with the Wind would provide the reason. Jack Warner expected that film to fail. It did not. The Academy Award nomination changed nothing at Warner Brothers in any practical sense. Jack Warner continued assigning her roles she considered beneath what she had demonstrated she could do. She continued refusing them. Each refusal triggered the suspension clause. The clock on her contract stopped. The refused weeks accumulated. The end date moved further away. By 1943, she had been under contract for 7 years and still had not fulfilled it. The contract that should have expired had not expired. It had grown. Warner Brothers informed her she owed them additional months and intended to collect. She consulted lawyers. The lawyers told her what she already suspected, that no actor had successfully challenged this clause in court, that the studios had written the contracts, that the financial and professional risk of litigation was considerable, and that the industry's informal mechanisms for punishing dissent were well established and effective. The studio was counting on that calculation to hold. It was a reasonable assumption. Every actor before her had made the same calculation and reached the same conclusion. She was 26 years old, had already received 2 Academy Award nominations, and would win the award itself within 3 years. She filed the lawsuit anyway. The legal argument her attorneys made was not novel. It had always been available. California labor law capped personal service contracts at 7 calendar years. Warner Brothers had been extending her contract beyond 7 years through suspensions, using the clause to punish non-compliance and extend their ownership indefinitely. The studio's position was equally straightforward. The suspensions were contractual, the extensions were contractual. She had agreed to the terms at signing. What followed was not a dramatic courtroom confrontation. It was a procedural grind that took 2 years to resolve. Filings, counterfilings. A superior court ruling in de Havilland's favor in 1944, Muscle. An appeal from Warner Brothers. And a final appellate decision in 1945 that confirmed the lower court's finding. The de Havilland law established that no personal service contract in California could be enforced beyond 7 calendar years, regardless of suspensions, extensions, or any other mechanism a studio chose to insert. Warner Brothers responded by ensuring she remained effectively unemployable for the duration of the case. No major studio hired her while the appeal was active. She spent 18 months living off savings, waiting for a ruling that was not guaranteed to go her way. When it did, she signed with a new studio on her own terms, made to each his own, and won the Academy Award for Best Actress. 2 years after that, she won it again for The Heiress. Jack Warner did not attend either ceremony. He had not been invited. The ruling did not dismantle the studio system immediately. What it did was remove the mechanism the system depended on to sustain itself. The indefinite extension clause the instrument studios had used since the 1920s to maintain permanent control over performers was now unenforceable in California, which is where every major studio operated. Agents began using the ruling in negotiations the following week. Actors who had previously had no statutory exit now had one that no contract could override. The leverage that had always belonged exclusively to the studios had shifted incrementally but permanently toward the people the studios employed. Bette Davis had attempted her own contract rebellion at Warner Brothers in 1936 and lost. She benefited from the ruling de Havilland won 7 years later without having to file a second lawsuit. Ida Lupino, who had walked away from her contract and built her own production company partly because the system offered no legitimate exit, was now operating in an industry the ruling had partially opened. By the mid-1950s, the long-term exclusive studio contract that had defined the relationship between Hollywood and its performers for 3 decades had effectively ceased to exist as a binding institution. The studios still existed. The power to own a performer's professional life indefinitely did not. One lawsuit filed by one actress who had been told the odds were against her had done more to restructure Hollywood's labor architecture than any negotiation or collective agreement that preceded it. Olivia de Havilland worked until she was 82. She won 2 Academy Awards, received 5 nominations, and outlived every executive at Warner Brothers who had been certain she would lose. She died on July 26, 2020. In Paris, at the age of 104, the last surviving principal cast member of Gone with the Wind, the film Jack Warner had loaned her out for because he expected it to fail. The de Havilland Law remains an active California labor law. It has been cited in disputes involving athletes, musicians, and technology workers who had no connection to Hollywood and no knowledge of whose name the law carries. She filed a lawsuit at 26 that is still protecting workers at 104. The industry called her difficult. The record calls her right. If this story stayed with you, like and subscribe. There are more of them. Women who were told no by the most powerful industry in the world, and who found a way through anyway. If you know one that deserves to be told, leave her name in the comments.